The conference room aboard Arcturus Station fell silent as the alien envoy finished speaking. Admiral Park sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table before him. Beside him, Fleet Admiral kept her face neutral, but her jaw was tight. General Menu of the Marine Corps stared at the tall creature with cold eyes. Director of Strategic Intelligence was already typing notes on her tablet. The envoy stood 8 feet tall with 4 arms and a chitinous shell that gleamed under the station lights. Its mandibles clicked together as it spoke through a translator device. The Empire has spoken. Humanity will surrender 90% of all colonies. You will submit to our oversight. You will pay tribute for 1,000 years. These terms are not negotiable. Finally spoke, his voice calm, and if we refuse? The envoy's compound eyes seemed to gleam with something like amusement. Then the full might of the Empire will fall upon your primitive species. We control 4,000 star systems. We command 12 species. Our fleets number in the tens of thousands. You have existed in space for barely 2 centuries. You are children playing with toys you do not understand. I see, said. How long do we have to decide? 7 of your Earth days. After that, we will take what we demand by force. The envoy turned without another word and left the room, its delegation following behind. The moment the door sealed, Menu slammed his fist on the table. Arrogant insects. They think we'll just roll over and accept this. Shook her head slowly. They have the numbers. Our intelligence confirms it. 15,000 warships at minimum, probably more. We have 800 in the home fleet and maybe 3,000 scattered across all our colonies. Looked up from her tablet. They're overconfident. I've been analyzing their military history for the past 6 months, ever since we detected their surveillance drones in our space. They haven't fought a real war in 800 years. Their last 3 conflicts were ceremonial displays of force against species that surrendered immediately. Stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there were 147 human colonies, billions of people who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. What's our realistic assessment? Can we fight them? Conventional warfare. No, they outnumber us 20 to 1. Their shield technology is superior. Their ships are larger and better armed. Paused. But their tactics are 8 centuries out of date. They use formations that would have been obsolete in Earth's 20th century. They don't understand electronic warfare. They've never faced drone swarms or cyber attacks. They fight like medieval armies with modern weapons. Minu leaned forward. What are you thinking? I'm thinking they don't know what war really is, said quietly. They know displays of force. They know intimidation. But actual warfare, the kind where survival is the only goal and every advantage matters, they've forgotten. Nodded slowly. We haven't. No, agreed. We haven't. Every war we've ever fought, every conflict on Earth, every tactical innovation born from desperation. We've spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other efficiently. We've refined it, perfected it, nearly destroyed ourselves with it multiple times. He turned back to face them. They've given us 7 days. That's their first mistake. Menu, begin Protocol Omega. I want every Marine division on alert. I want boarding teams training around the clock. Start moving our fleets into position. Use civilian traffic as cover. I want our ships exactly where we need them when this starts. Give me everything on their communications, their command structure, their supply lines. What are you planning? Menu asked. They want to show us their power, said. We're going to show them ours. But first, we need the approval to do what needs to be done. 6 hours later, stood before President Han in a secure video conference. Around her in the government chambers were the civilian leadership of humanity, representatives from 50 major colonies and military advisors. The discussion had been heated for 3 hours. Admiral Park, President said, her voice tired. You're asking for authorization to wage total war against an enemy that outnumbers us 20 to 1. You're asking me to risk human extinction. No, Madam President, I'm asking you to prevent it. If we surrender, we become slaves. If we submit to oversight, we lose our freedom forever. And if we accept these terms, what happens in 10 years when they demand more? In 50 years? In 100? Took a breath. They chose this path. They came to us with demands backed by threats of annihilation. They gave us no choice. Can we win? Asked directly. Yes, but not in the way they expect. Not in a fair fight or a clean war. We'll have to fight the way humans have always fought when facing impossible odds. Dirty, brutal, without mercy. His voice was steady. I've studied their doctrine. I've analyzed their weaknesses. They fight by rules we don't have to follow. They expect honor we won't show. They want a war of spectacle. We'll give them a war of survival. The president was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at her advisors. One by one, they nodded. She turned back to, "You have your authorization, Admiral. Do what you must. But understand this. History will judge us by what comes next." I understand, Madam President. The next 7 days passed in a blur of preparation. Ships moved through space under false civilian registries. Marines drilled on boarding procedures. Engineers constructed weapons in hidden facilities. Scientists activated experimental systems that had never been tested in combat. Every human colony received coded instructions. Every ship captain opened sealed orders. Every soldier checked their equipment one more time. On the 7th day, sat in the command center of Arcturus Station. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship, every fleet, every strategic asset. Stood to his right was aboard her flagship. Minu was with his Marines, ready to deploy. "Sir," a communications officer said, "the Empire is demanding our response. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Open a channel," ordered. "All frequencies. I want every ship, every colony, every outpost to hear this." The channel opened. Spoke clearly, his words translated into every major galactic language. "You came to humanity with demands. You threatened us with annihilation. You called us primitive and weak. You believed we would surrender out of fear." He paused, letting the silence hang. "You were wrong. You chose conflict. You forced this war. So let us teach you something your empire has forgotten in 8 centuries of dominance. Let us show you what real war looks like when fought by a species that has made it an art form." His final words echoed across the galaxy. "Since you chose conflict, let us show you how it's done." Cut the transmission and looked at his command staff. "All fleets execute battle plans. All stations weapons free. All units engage at will." The war had begun. The Grand Fleet arrived at New Pyongyang 3 days after humanity's defiant message. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominance. Around him, in space, floated 2,500 warships, their formation perfect and imposing. It was the largest battle fleet assembled in 400 years. "Scan the system," ordered. His tactical officer bent over a console, compound eyes studying the readouts. "Commander, the planet shows minimal life signs. No orbital defenses detected. No defense fleet. No military installations." The officer looked up, confused. "It's as if they abandoned it." "Cowards," clicked with satisfaction. "They ran rather than face us. Order the fleet into occupation formation. We'll land garrison troops and claim this world for the Empire." The fleet began to move, ships spreading out in a pattern that had been used successfully for centuries. Capital ships in the center, cruisers forming a protective screen, support vessels at the rear. It was textbook doctrine, proven through countless victories. 40 light seconds away, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, Captain Shin watched it all happen. The Silent Dawn was humanity's stealth carrier, wrapped in experimental dark matter cloaking that bent sensor waves around the ship. It was invisible. Beside him, Wing Commander Song prepared to launch their fighter wings. "They're in position," said quietly. "All ships report ready." "Affirmative, Captain. 12,000 combat drones armed and awaiting launch command. The Shadow Knife and Ghost Wind report their drone wings are also ready. Total of 36,000 drones. His fingers moved across her console. They have no idea we're here. Good, remember, we're not here to win a fair fight. We're here to hurt them and disappear. Launch when ready. The first wave launched in absolute silence. 12,000 autonomous combat drones, each the size of a small car, burst from the carrier's launch bays. They didn't need life support. They didn't need to worry about G-forces. They were controlled by advanced AI that had learned from every dogfight in human history, every tactic ever recorded, every successful kill ever made. The drones accelerated at 40 Gs, their missiles and armed. They moved in coordinated swarms, using pack tactics borrowed from wolves, hunting patterns taken from sharks, and maneuver sequences that would have killed any biological pilot. The fleet detected them 15 seconds before impact. Alarms blared across every ship. Unknown contacts, thousands of them, they're everywhere. Stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red markers filled the screen like a swarm of angry insects. Battle stations, activate shields, return fire. The shields came up just as the first drone struck. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space. The shields held strong, as they were designed to do. Dozens of drones exploded against the protective barriers. For a moment, it seemed the technology would prevail. Then General Menu, surprise, arrived. Hidden in the asteroid belt, camouflaged to look like simple rocks, were launch platforms that had been placed there months ago during what the thought was routine mining activity. Each platform held kinetic kill missiles, simple tungsten rods weighing 20 tons each. They weren't high-tech. They didn't need to be. They were accelerated to 40% the speed of light and aimed at the capital ships. Physics is brutally simple at relativistic speeds. The kinetic energy of a 20-ton rod moving at 0.4 C is equivalent to several nuclear weapons. The shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and explosive warheads, could do nothing against pure momentum. The first kinetic round struck the eternal dominance amidships. The shield flickered and died. The rod punched through 30 decks before its energy was spent. The massive dreadnought shuddered, systems failing, atmosphere venting into space. 300 more rounds followed in the next 60 seconds. The formation dissolved into chaos. Ships tried to scatter, but they were too close together, their formation too rigid. Capital ships collided with cruisers. Destroyers burned their engines trying to escape the kill zone. Meanwhile, the drones continued their relentless assault, targeting engines, weapon systems, and bridge modules. Pulled himself up from where the impact had thrown him. Half his bridge crew was dead. Sparks flew from shattered consoles. Retreat! All ships retreat! Get us out of here! The surviving ships turned and fled, their perfect formation now a scattered mob running for their lives. They left behind 300 wrecks and thousands of dead. Watch them go. Do we pursue? Negative, came's voice over the command channel from Arcturus Station. Let them run. Let them report what happened here. Fear is a weapon too. Nodded, recall all drones. Take us to the next position. Back at High Command, the surviving ship's reports caused pandemonium. The Supreme Council met in emergency session. The display showed the battle footage. The sudden appearance of thousands of attack drones, the kinetic strikes that their shields couldn't stop, the tactical precision that had turned their fleet into target practice. How is this possible? Demanded Council Chief. These humans are primitives. They've been in space for 2 centuries. We've ruled the galaxy for. Military advisor studied the tactical breakdown. They're using weapons and tactics we've never encountered, not because they're more advanced, but because they're more brutal. These kinetic weapons are ancient technology. Simple rods of metal accelerated to high speed. Our shields were never designed to stop such crude attacks because no civilized species uses them. Why not? Demanded. Because they're indiscriminate, unstoppable. If one of those rods missed its target and hit a planet, it would cause extinction-level devastation. We don't use them for the same reason we don't use planet-killing weapons. They violate every rule of civilized warfare. And the drones. No biological pilot can survive the G-forces those things pull. They're purely mechanical, controlled by artificial intelligence. Again, we banned such weapons 800 years ago because warfare should involve honor and courage, not machines killing from safety. His mandibles clicked in agitation. So they fight without honor, without rules. This changes nothing. Mobilize the full fleet, all 15,000 warships. We will crush them with overwhelming force. Supreme Council Chief said quietly, perhaps we should reconsider. These humans may be more dangerous than we thought. No, slammed his primary arms on the table. We are the Empire. We have ruled for 2,000 years. We will not be humiliated by primitives who fight like animals. Send the fleet to Earth. We will destroy there and end this. Bowed his head, as you command. The order went out across the Empire. Every warship was recalled. Every garrison was stripped of ships. The full military might of the Empire began moving toward human space. Their target was clear, Earth itself. On Arcturus Station, monitored the communications intercepts. Sir, they're mobilizing everything. 15,000 confirmed warships heading our way. They're going for Earth. Study the tactical map. Expected, they're angry now. They want revenge. They want to prove they're still the dominant power. Can we stop that many ships? Asked over the comm channel. Not in a direct fight, but they have to get to Earth first, and we control the route they'll have to take, smiled coldly. Minu, how are your preparations in the Terminus corridor? Minu's voice came back confident. Ready and waiting, sir. Let them come. Good. This is where we teach them the second lesson. You can have the bigger fleet, the better technology, the stronger ships, but none of that matters if you can't reach the battlefield alive. Opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, all stations, all units, the enemy is coming in force. They think numbers will win. Let's show them what attrition means. Positions, everyone. The real war starts now. The Armada moved through space like a mechanical tide. 15,000 warships stretched across 100,000 kilometers, their formation impressive and terrifying. On the command deck of the new flagship Vengeance Absolute, Fleet Marshal Ha watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. We will reach the Terminus corridor in 8 hours, his navigator reported. Advanced scouts report the corridor is clear of major human forces. Of course it is, Ha said. They know they cannot stop us. They will try to defend there and they will fail, but remain alert. Scan everything. The humans have shown they are cunning. The Terminus corridor was a necessary evil for any fleet approaching Earth from this direction. It was a region of dense asteroid fields, unstable stellar phenomena, and complex gravity wells. The only clear routes through it had been mapped centuries ago. Any fleet had to slow down, navigate carefully, and stay in formation to avoid disaster. They had sent engineering ships ahead to scan for mines and traps. They had cleared 3 separate routes through the corridor. Their sensors swept constantly for any sign of ambush. They thought they were prepared. Deep inside a hollowed-out asteroid that looked like any other in the field, Colonel Lee watched them come. His command center was buried 2 kilometers beneath the rock surface, surrounded by automated defense platforms that had taken 5 years to install. Everything was powered down. Everything was quiet. Everything was waiting. Contact in 4 hours, his sensor officer reported quietly. They're coming exactly where we predicted. Good, said. Activate the welcome package. Throughout the asteroid field, thousands of small probes began to activate. They had been drifting like debris for months, indistinguishable from natural rock. Now they began to emit carefully calibrated signals, creating interference patterns across the electromagnetic spectrum. On the Vengeance Absolute, alarms began to sound. Marshall were detecting unusual readings from the corridor, sensor interference building rapidly. From what? Unknown. It's like the entire region is becoming electrically active. Ha studied the readings. Natural phenomenon. These regions are known for solar storms. Possibly, but the timing is suspicious. Maintain course. Increase shield power. All ships stay in formation. The fleet entered the terminus corridor. As they did, Strategic Commander Nam triggered the next phase from her station aboard the Storm Dancer. She had spent 3 years studying the stellar mechanics of this region. She knew every solar flare, every magnetic field line, every unstable mass of plasma. And she had learned how to weaponize them. The antimatter mines her teams had placed throughout the corridor weren't designed to destroy ships directly. They were designed to destabilize the local environment. Each mine was positioned at a precise point where a small explosion would trigger a cascade effect. Initiate sequence ordered. The mines detonated in a carefully choreographed pattern. The antimatter reactions were tiny by naval standards, but their effects were catastrophic for the surrounding space. Magnetic field lines that had been stable for centuries suddenly twisted and broke. Pockets of trapped plasma erupted outward. Solar flares that normally occurred once a month were triggered all at once. The terminus corridor transformed from a navigational hazard into an environment barely survivable. Radiation levels spiking. The navigator's voice was panicked. Magnetic storms forming. The safe routes are collapsing. Ships scattered as space itself became hostile. Vessels that strayed too close to the plasma eruptions had their shields overloaded. The intense radiation interfered with sensors and communications. The magnetic storms played havoc with navigation systems. All ships maximum shields, Ha ordered. Bunch up, stay close together. It was exactly what the humans wanted. Destroyer Captain and his had been waiting in silence for 3 weeks. His ship, the Silent Predator, was designed for deep space ambush. Everything about it prioritized stealth over firepower. It could shut down every system except life support and drift like a dead rock. Now, with the fleet bunched together and blinded by the radiation storms, gave the order. All ships power up. Attack pattern Delta, point-blank range only. 6 destroyers that had been drifting among the asteroids suddenly came to life. Their engines flared. Their weapons activated. They closed to knife-fighting range before they even knew they were there. Antimatter torpedoes launched at ranges measured in hundreds of meters instead of thousands of kilometers. At that distance, there was no time to dodge, no warning to react. The torpedoes struck capital ships and detonated. Ships shook as return fire finally found them, but by then his torpedoes were already away. Hard turn, get us back into cover, reload tubes. They scattered into the asteroid field, disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Behind them, 5 dreadnoughts were dying, their hulls torn open by antimatter explosions. But the real horror for the came next. Defense grid activated. Thousands of automated weapons platforms, built into the asteroids themselves, opened fire simultaneously. That had been silent for years now spoke with the voice of accelerated metal. Missile batteries launched swarms of guided warheads. Point defense lasers created a web of deadly light. The fleet tried to return fire, but they couldn't see the targets. The platforms were embedded in asteroids, protected by kilometers of rock. Destroying them required hitting the asteroids themselves, which just created more debris and more chaos. And then Minu's Marines arrived for the close quarters work. The boarding pods were brutal in their simplicity. Metal cylinders packed with Marines in powered armor, accelerated to 10% light speed by magnetic launchers. They struck capital ships with the force of small meteorites, punching through hulls and delivering soldiers directly into the enemy vessels. Sergeant Wu felt the impact slam him forward against his restraints. The pod-shaped charges blew open the front, and suddenly he was inside a cruiser. The corridor was full of alien crew members, staring in shock at the humans who had just crashed through their hull. "Marines, go!" Wu leveled his weapon and advanced. The powered armor made him as strong as a tank. The targeting system in his helmet highlighted threats. His squad moved with practiced efficiency, clearing compartments with brutal speed. Their objective wasn't to capture the ship. It was to destroy it from the inside. Plant charges on critical systems and get out before the ship died. 10 minutes later, Wu and his squad fought their way to an intact escape pod. They launched just as their explosives detonated, the cruiser tearing itself apart behind them. Across the terminus corridor, 50 boarding actions played out simultaneously. They had never experienced combat like this. Their ships were violated, their crews slaughtered in their own corridors. Ships that survived the external attacks were destroyed from within. Marshal Ha watched his fleet die around him. They had entered the corridor with 15,000 ships. Now, 6 hours later, they were down to 11,000. 4,000 warships destroyed or disabled, thousands more damaged, and they still hadn't faced the human main fleet. "Get us out of here," he ordered. "Push through, we must reach clear space." The fleet surged forward, abandoning damaged vessels, ignoring distress calls from crippled ships. They left a trail of wreckage behind them as they fled the corridor. As the last ships cleared the terminus corridor, Admiral studied the battle reports from Arcturus Station. Stood beside him, watching the surviving enemy fleet regroup in open space. 4,000 ships destroyed, she reported. Estimates suggest another 2,000 are combat ineffective from damage. They still outnumber us 7-1. But they're demoralized, added over the comm. Their fleet cohesion is broken. They're afraid. Minu's voice came through, rough with exhaustion. "My Marines performed perfectly. Boarding actions were 90% successful. We demonstrated that their ships aren't safe even from the inside." Nodded slowly. They came here expecting a conventional battle, a fair fight where numbers would decide the outcome. Instead, we've shown them something different. We've shown them that in real war there are no fair fights, only fights you win or fights you lose. He opened a channel to the home fleet, where waited with Earth's defenders. "Admiral, are your forces ready?" "Ready and waiting, sir. They're coming to us now." Then prepare to show them the final lesson. They think they can still win because they still have numbers. We're going to teach them that numbers don't matter when your enemy refuses to let them be used effectively. Looked at the display showing the fleet limping toward Earth. They had lost a third of their strength and hadn't even seen the main human battle fleet yet. They had learned about ambushes and environmental warfare. They had experienced boarding actions and cyber attacks. But they hadn't learned the most important lesson yet. They hadn't learned what happens when humans fight with their backs against the wall, defending their home. That lesson was about to begin. The fleet reached the Sol system with 11,000 ships. It was still the largest military force assembled in galactic history, and they could see their target ahead. Earth, the blue-green of humanity, orbiting its yellow sun. Marshal Ha stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the planet on the... There it is, the source of all this resistance. Once we destroy their capital, the rest of their colonies will surrender. His tactical officer studied the sensor readouts. "Sir, detecting 800 human warships in defensive positions around Earth. They're using the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt for cover. No sign of fixed defenses." 800 against 11,000, Ha said with satisfaction. "Even after all their tricks, they cannot overcome these odds. All ships, battle formation. We will sweep aside their defense fleet and bombard their into submission." What they didn't know was that every human ship in the Sol system had been training for this exact battle for 5 years. Every captain knew the plan. Every crew had rehearsed their roles. Every weapon had been calibrated for the unique environment of Earth's home system. Admiral stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, watching the fleet approach. She opened a channel that broadcast to every human ship, every orbital station, every soldier waiting for the battle to begin. This is it. They came to our home thinking we would surrender. They think their numbers will win. Show them what it means to fight humans defending their birthplace. She switched to the command frequency. Fleet, this is Admiral of the Terran Defense Force. You should have accepted peace. Then she cut the transmission and gave the order. All ships execute Plan Thunder. Show them chaos. The human fleet didn't form up for a traditional battle. Instead, every ship began moving independently, using the solar system's geography as a weapon. Destroyers slingshot around the moon, using its gravity to build speed. Cruisers hid in the asteroid belt, appearing and disappearing among the rocks. Frigates dived toward Mars, using its atmosphere to mask their movements. They had never seen anything like it. Their doctrine called for ships to maintain formation, to fight as a coordinated fleet. But the humans fought like a swarm of independent predators. They're everywhere, the tactical officer shouted. We can't target them, they won't hold still. A human destroyer emerged from behind the moon at high speed, fired a full spread of missiles at a cruiser, then dove back into cover before return fire could find it. The cruiser's shields held, but the attack forced it to break formation. A squadron of human fighters, piloted by drones controlled by Wing Commander Song's AI systems, streaked through the formation at speeds that would have killed biological pilots. They targeted sensors, communications arrays, and point defense weapons, degrading the enemy's ability to coordinate their attacks. Captain Shin's carrier group launched wave after wave of drones that didn't just attack physically. They carried cyber warfare packages designed by humanity's best hackers. The drones got close to ships and began transmitting viruses, malware, and corrupted data packets. The fleet, which relied on interconnected computer systems, suddenly found their ships receiving false sensor data. Targeting computers began identifying friendly ships as enemies. Navigation systems displayed incorrect positions. Communications became filled with static and ghost signals. Our systems are compromised, a captain reported. I'm showing enemy ships in positions where I know they can't be. My weapons are trying to target our own fleet. Ha slammed his fist down, switched to manual control, disconnect automated systems. But that just slowed them down more. The humans had planned for this. Their ships continued their chaotic dance, appearing from unexpected angles, striking fast and disappearing before they could respond effectively. Admiral watched the battle unfold from Arcturus Station, coordinating the grand strategy. He had studied every great military commander in human history. Sun had taught him about deception and misdirection. Admiral Yi Sun Sin had shown the power of using terrain as a weapon. Modern strategists had demonstrated how to fight against superior numbers. He combined all those lessons into a battle plan they couldn't counter, because they had never seen anything like it. Phase 2 ordered, Minyu, you're cleared to go. General Minyu led the assault from a heavy carrier positioned near Jupiter. His Marines had been waiting for this moment. They launched in 50 breaching pods, each aimed at a different capital ship. But this time, the pods didn't just crash through hulls. They carried something special, nanotech packages that would spread through a ship's systems like a virus, taking control of life support, gravity, and door controls. Within minutes of a boarding pod striking, the targeted ship would become a nightmare for its own crew. Lieutenant Park felt her pod slam through the hull of a battleship. She and her squad poured out into a corridor where the gravity suddenly reversed, sending alien crew members tumbling toward the ceiling. Emergency doors closed randomly, trapping defenders. The lights went out, plunging everything into darkness. But the human Marines had thermal imaging and night vision. They moved through the ship like ghosts, taking control of critical systems, planting explosives on power cores and creating chaos. They tried to respond, but they were fighting in their own ships that had turned against them. Meanwhile, more boarding pods kept arriving. Outside, the space battle continued its brutal pace. Human ships used Earth's magnetosphere to disrupt sensors. They hid in the shadow of Mars and emerged to strike at the enemy's flanks. They coordinated their attacks with perfect timing, overwhelming local defenses before the main fleet could respond. The human home fleet was outnumbered, but they were fighting on their home ground. Every asteroid, every planet, every moon was a tactical asset. Every gravity well was a weapon. Every piece of space debris became potential cover. Hours into the battle, they had destroyed 300 human ships, but they had lost 4,000 of their own. Their formation had completely broken apart. Their communications were compromised. Their command structure was in chaos. Individual captains were making their own decisions, often contradicting each other. Marshal Ha watched his fleet disintegrate around him. This wasn't warfare as he understood it. The humans didn't fight with honor or follow any recognizable doctrine. They struck from shadows, retreated before counterattacks could land, and turned every advantage they had into a liability. "Sir, we've lost contact with 40% of our fleet," his communications officer reported. "Multiple ships are reporting internal sabotage. Our cyber defenses have been completely penetrated. We can't coordinate our forces effectively." Another alarm blared. "Enemy boarding parties have taken control of the Iron Dominion. The ship is firing on our formation." Ha stared in horror as one of his own dreadnoughts, now controlled by human Marines, turned its guns on nearby vessels. It fired at point-blank range before his own ships could destroy it. "Enough," he shouted. "Signal retreat, all ships fall back." But retreat wasn't easy when half the fleet couldn't receive the order, and the other half was scattered across the solar system. The withdrawal became a rout as individual ships broke away and fled, leaving damaged vessels behind. The human fleet pursued, harrying the retreating, destroying stragglers, and ensuring the enemy couldn't regroup. By the time the battle ended, the fleet had been reduced from 11,000 ships to barely 3,000 combat-effective vessels. They fled the Sol system in disarray, leaving behind thousands of wrecks and tens of thousands of dead. On Earth, billions of people watched the alien fleet retreat. Cities erupted in celebration. The impossible had happened. Humanity had defended there against overwhelming odds. But in the command center of Arcturus Station, Admiral wasn't celebrating. He was studying the tactical map, watching the broken fleet limp away. President Han's face appeared on his screen. "Admiral, you've won. They're defeated. Earth is safe." "No, Madam President," said quietly. "This battle is won, but the war isn't over. As long as the Empire exists, they can rebuild and come back. We've proven we can defend ourselves. Now we need to prove something else." "What?" "That we can end this permanently. With your permission, I want to take the fleet and finish what they started." There was a long pause, then nodded. "Do what you must, Admiral, end this war." Opened a channel to all human forces. "All ships that can still fight, form up. We're not going to wait for them to rebuild. We're going to pursue them back to their territory and dismantle their ability to ever threaten us again. This is no longer about defense. This is about ensuring peace." Admiral brought her battered but victorious fleet into formation. General Menu gathered his Marines. Captain prepared his carriers. Director began plotting the route to space. The hunted had become the hunter, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity took off the gloves completely. The human fleet entered space like a surgical knife. They didn't come to conquer or occupy. They came to dismantle. Admiral divided his forces into rapid strike groups. Each group had a specific target: military shipyards, weapon manufacturing facilities, naval bases, and fleet command centers. Nothing else. They avoided civilian populations. They bypassed commercial stations. They ignored agricultural colonies. Their targets were purely military. Director had provided the intelligence, years of careful observation finally paying off. She knew where every military asset was located. She knew their production capabilities, their supply lines, their command structure. "Remember," told his captains before they dispersed, "we're not here to commit genocide. We're here to remove their ability to wage war. Every shot must be precise. Every target must be. We will not become the monsters they thought we were." The first strike hit the shipyards, the largest military construction facility in space. Admiral led the attack with 400 ships. They emerged from FTL at the system's edge and accelerated toward their target. The shipyard's defenders scrambled to respond, but they were garrison forces, not frontline fleets. They had been preparing for defense against pirates, not against a battle-hardened force that had just destroyed the Grand Fleet. Ships moved with brutal efficiency. They targeted the construction frames, the assembly facilities, the dry docks where new warships were being built. Kinetic rounds and missiles reduced the infrastructure to wreckage. Within 6 hours, the shipyard that had produced ships for 8 centuries was gone. Across space, similar strikes played out. Captain's carrier groups hit weapons foundries. General Menu's special forces infiltrated command bunkers and destroyed communications networks. Destroyer squadrons led by Captain eliminated supply depots. The Empire tried to respond, but their military was shattered. The ships that survived the Sol system battle were scattered, demoralized, and leaderless. Fleet commands issued contradictory orders. Garrison forces refused to leave their posts to assist other systems. The unity that had held the Empire together for 2,000 years began to crack. The Supreme Council met in emergency session. The chamber was filled with representatives from all 12 member species, and for the first time in centuries, they were arguing openly. "This is the fault," a delegate shouted. "Your arrogance brought this disaster upon us." "We followed council policy," a representative shot back. "All of you voted for the ultimatum. Because you assured us the humans would surrender." Council chief tried to restore order, but it was hopeless. The coalition was breaking apart. Member species were already pulling their ships back to defend their own territories. Some were even sending secret messages to the humans, offering to betray the Empire in exchange for peace. The Empire was dying from within. Colonel Lee led the most delicate operation. His special forces infiltrated the military academy on the planet. Their mission wasn't to destroy it, but to deliver a message. They breached the facility at night, avoided killing anyone, and made their way to the Grand Assembly Hall. There, left a recording that would play the next morning for all the cadets and instructors. The recording showed Admiral speaking calmly and translated. "To the future military leaders of the peoples, your empire forced this war. Your leaders believed humans were weak because we were young. They learned differently. We did not want this conflict, but we will finish it. We are dismantling your military infrastructure not out of hatred but out of necessity. When we are done, you will no longer have the ability to threaten others, but you will still have your homes, your families, your futures. Learn from this. Warfare is not a game. It is not about honor or glory. It is about survival, and humanity has spent 10,000 years learning how to survive." The recording ended with footage from the Battle of Earth, showing the Grand Fleet's destruction. The message was clear. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. 3 months after the human fleet entered space, the Empire's military capacity was reduced to a fraction of its former strength. Shipyards were destroyed. Weapons facilities were rubble. Fleet commands were offline. The Empire still existed as a political entity, but it no longer had the power to threaten anyone. The 12 species that had formed the coalition began fragmenting. Some declared independence. Others formed new alliances. Several sent ambassadors to humanity, asking for trade agreements and peace treaties. The Galactic Council, which had remained neutral throughout the conflict, finally sent representatives to meet with humanity. A delegation arrived at Arcturus Station, led by Ambassador of the Hegemony. Admiral received them in a conference room overlooking the station's main docking bay, where human warships came and went. President Han joined via holographic link from Earth. Ambassador was a crystalline being who had observed galactic politics for 600 years. He studied with his multifaceted eyes before speaking. Admiral Park, the galaxy has watched your war with great interest. Your victory over the Empire is unprecedented. A species barely 2 centuries old has defeated a power that ruled for 2. We did what was necessary, replied evenly. Indeed, but now the galaxy wishes to understand how. Your technology is not superior to the. Your numbers were smaller. Your experience in space warfare was minimal, yet you won decisively, leaned forward. How? Was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. The Empire and most galactic civilizations reached the stars and forgot what it means to struggle for survival. You built your societies on principles of honor and order. You made warfare into something civilized, something controlled. You forgot that real warfare has no rules except one: win or die. He gestured to the ships visible through the window. Humanity has spent 10,000 years at war with itself. We've fought over every ideology, every resource, every piece of territory. We've nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. We've created weapons that could end all life on our planet. We've studied warfare not as an academic exercise but as a matter of survival. Admiral, who had joined the meeting, added, "We used tactics and strategies they had never encountered because they abandoned them centuries ago as uncivilized. Cyber warfare, psychological operations, environmental warfare, asymmetric tactics. We didn't fight fair because survival doesn't care about fairness." General Menu spoke next. "Every human soldier learns about the wars of our past. We study what worked and what failed. We remember the lessons written in the blood of our ancestors. The fought like it was a parade. We fought like our species depended on it." Ambassador absorbed this, his crystalline form refracting the light thoughtfully. "So you are saying the very thing that makes humanity dangerous, your history of warfare, is what allowed you to survive?" "Yes," President said from her holographic projection. "But we don't want to be known only for war. We wanted peace. The forced this conflict. We showed them what warfare looks like when waged by a species that made it an art form. Now we hope we never have to teach that lesson again." "The Galactic Council wishes to offer humanity full membership," said, "along with permanent seats on the Security Council, the Trade Commission, and the Technology Exchange. We would also like to establish formal diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges." "We accept," replied, "with the understanding that human space remains sovereign and that no external power will dictate our internal affairs." Of course, the Council has also drafted new protocols regarding military aggression. The ultimatum to humanity has been officially condemned. No member species may threaten extinction-level warfare against another sentient species. Allowed himself a small smile, enforced how. His crystalline form seemed to shimmer with something like amusement. "The Council believes that humanity's fleet will serve as an effective deterrent against any species considering aggressive expansion. Your reputation alone should prevent conflicts." Over the next year, humanity integrated into the galactic community. Trade routes were established. Technology was exchanged. Human colonies expanded, but now with the blessing and cooperation of other species. The university on Earth opened exchange programs with alien institutions. Human scientists collaborated with researchers from a dozen species. But everyone remembered the war. New military academies across the galaxy began teaching human tactical doctrine. The Battle of Earth became required study for every officer candidate. Human advisors were requested to train other species militaries in modern warfare. 50 years after the war ended, Admiral retired. He spent his final years teaching at the Terran Military Academy, sharing the lessons of the conflict with new generations. He always ended his lectures the same way. They asked us to surrender. We refused. They brought overwhelming force. We brought overwhelming determination. They had numbers. We had necessity. They fought to prove their dominance. We fought to ensure our survival. That difference decided everything. He would pause, looking at the cadets before him. I hope you never have to use these lessons in real war. I hope the galaxy has learned that threatening humanity is futile. But if that day ever comes again, remember what we proved. It doesn't matter how big your enemy is, how advanced their technology, how many ships they bring. What matters is whether you're willing to do whatever it takes to protect what you love. The recording of the message humanity sent before the war became the most famous transmission in galactic history. It was taught in schools, analyzed by historians, and remembered as the moment everything changed. Since you chose conflict, let us show you how it's done. And humanity had shown them, not with superior technology or greater numbers, but with 10,000 years of hard-earned experience in the art of warfare. They had shown the galaxy what a species forged in conflict could accomplish when pushed to the edge. Now peace reigned. Human ships patrolled trade routes. Human engineers built stations in partnership with alien species. Human artists and scientists contributed to galactic culture. But everyone knew, from the colony to the oldest civilization, that behind the peaceful facade was a species that understood war better than anyone else in the galaxy. And that knowledge kept the peace more effectively than any treaty ever could.